I've never watched Star Trek. Let me start with that. This is the topic I was assigned because we're going to be in Ephesians 6, and here in a minute you'll hopefully see how this is relevant to that passage. But I feel like if I'm given a nerdy topic, I'm just going to embrace it and run with it. I do know this saying and the hand signal because when I was in high school, there was a guy that was a few years older than us who loved Star Trek. And we did a senior farewell for some of our seniors, and we thought to honor him, the guys would stand up and say, "Live long and prosper." And he said, "Extend your thumb." Apparently I didn't do it right. So I'll always remember that. I saw someone on a TV show one time, and they did this. And my wife was sitting next to me on the couch, and I said, "He's supposed to extend his thumb." And Carrie said, "You're a nerd." I said, "I haven't watched. I just know." Live long and prosper. You may not know, but Spock, look, my dad's a nerd. Is that who says that? Yeah, okay, thank you. I just got to slam my dad and verify that fact. Spock, live long and prosper. You don't know this, but he actually stole this from Ephesians chapter 6. And so if you want to turn over to Ephesians 6, we're going to be camped out in verses 1 through 3 this morning. So this is actually just a ploy. You are all here to hear me, but you don't know this, but I'm actually just speaking to this little one right here in the middle, because this is my daughter, Darcy. And I was given a passage on obeying and honoring your parents, and I said, this is perfect. I'm going to bring my kid with me, and you all just get to hear, but this is really for her. Unfortunately, next to her are my parents, and they know how I was as a child, so it doesn't work out a whole lot for me. Yeah, thank you. So this passage in Ephesians chapter 6, verses 1 through 3. Oh, see, I can't ever remember what I put on my PowerPoint. Ephesians chapter 6, verses 1 through 3 is describing this relationship between a child and their parent. And now that I am a parent, I understand even better that there may be no more difficult relationship to maneuver in this life than the relationship between a child and a parent. There are just so many different factors. And certainly while the responsibility for a lot of that relationship falls on us as parents, there's a lot of responsibility on young people as well to live out what this passage says. And so what we're going to do this morning, I'm going to read that passage here in a minute, but we're going to look at two requirements for young people, two expectations, and then we're going to look at two motivations. So here's what God expects from us, and here's why that should matter to us. Because we live in a time where I don't think the home looks always the way that it's supposed to, the way that God wants it to look. I could still remember there was this show called Wife Swap on. Look, I didn't watch the show, but I've seen this clip. It was supposed to be one mom from one home came and tried to help another family who was just very different. And so you had a mom who was very healthy, came into this home and was trying to help this family who ate sweets all the time. And they had a young son named Curtis. And Curtis, throughout the videos, refers to himself as King Curtis. Because in that home, Curtis was king. You need to eat your vegetables. No. He doesn't eat his vegetables. You need to do this. No, I'm not going to do that. And then when this new lady comes in, is like, hey, we're getting rid of the sweets. We're going to eat healthy. King Curtis goes to his room, he packs his suitcase, and he walks to Grandma's house where he got some chicken nuggets. It's a funny clip, and you're like, ha ha ha, that's funny that they're... And then you think about it, and you're like, that's a real person in a real relationship. And truthfully, I don't think it's that different than a lot of the interactions that you would see in most homes between a parent and a child. Mom and dad say one thing, the child says, nope, it's not going to be that way. And parents, either because they're just tired or because they've been misled in what their responsibility is as a parent, they give in. Yeah, okay, it's just easier to do it your way. And our children become kings and queens of our home. Now, look, my daughters are princesses. They are. There's only one queen in our home. It's my wife. Just want to clear that up. I don't even get the title of king. What's it called when you just marry the queen? King something. Look, I'm just... Thank you. I don't know. Once again, I don't follow anything. I just get titles and I'm forced to look them up on Wikipedia. So, expectation number one for children that we see in this passage, and that is obedience. Okay, number one, obedience. Here's our passage. Let's just go ahead and read it while we're here. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise that it may go well with you and that you may live long in the land. So, obedience. Of the two expectations we're going to look at, obedience is probably the easiest to understand and, to some degree, the easiest to put into practice. Because most of us understand what obedience means. My parents tell me to do something, I'm going to do it. If your parents say you got to be home by 10, you're home by 10. If your parents say you need to clean your room, you need to clean your room. If your parents say you need to eat your green beans, even if you're choking them down, obedience means I'm going to eat my green beans. Okay? Obedience is pretty cut and dry. We understand it. It's simple. That doesn't mean it's easy to do, but it's easy to understand. And I think there's a phrase in verse 1 that helps us even better understand what he means by obey your parents. And that is this phrase, in the Lord. So there's our... Look, when I sent that to somebody, it was in the right spot. B-Y. That's the... I don't know. Obey your parents. And that one's kind of in the right. Look. Don't look at the PowerPoint anymore. I don't know why. There's another line. All right, so in the Lord. That's the phrase we're going to look at. There's some conversations about what this phrase, in the Lord, means. Some people believe that it means that you only obey your parents as long as they're expecting you to do something that is good and in the Lord. So if my parents said, you can't pray, that's not in the Lord. And so I can pray. There are some that believe that in the Lord means, in the sense like I am baptized in the Lord. And so they think what this passage means is it is talking to young people who have become a follower of Christ, but are still living under the authority of their parents. I don't have issues with either of those. I think they make sense. But I like to look at the verses around this section because I think there are some passages that kind of help us understand this. This section on children and their parents actually sets in the middle of two different passages about other relationships. The one right before this is about wives and their husbands. The one right after this is about bondservants and their masters. And all of them kind of follow a similar formula. So when you look at Ephesians 5:22, talking about wives, it says, wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord. And when you look down in Ephesians chapter 6, bondservants, obey your earthly masters with fear and trembling, with a sincere heart, as you would Christ. I think each of these phrases are linked together. I think they're linked in meaning. And so what I think it's saying is, wives, you submit to Christ the same way you submit to your husband the same way we submit to Christ. Bondservants, you submit to your masters the same way you submit to Christ. And so if those are true, I think that what he's saying in verses 1 through 3 is, children, you need to obey your parents the same way you would obey Christ.
Hey, that's good.
It is good. I wish someone would have told me that when I was younger. I thought I was just disobeying my parents. Apparently, no. It's that idea like when I leave my kids with the babysitter and I say, hey, when I'm gone, this is me. I'm not here. But the babysitter, if they tell you to do something, it's just like if I told you to do it. We were mean to our babysitters, so that's probably a terrible example. That's a story for another day. I promise I do treat people nice. Hi, Gary. I tease Gary because I love Gary. And because he rags on the Nuggets. So that's fine. Number one in the West. Sorry, did I say that? So, children, obey your parents the same way that you would obey Christ. that carries a different weight than just obey your parents because what they said is good, or obey your parents because you're a Christian and that's what Christians do. You obey your parents just like it is Christ who comes and, now look, go clean your room. Why does Jesus care if my room is clean? He doesn't. But he cares that you obey your parents. Okay, and so that phrase, in the Lord, I believe he's saying you obey your parents in the very same way you would obey Christ. Then we get our second expectation of children. You have obedience, but you also have honor. Now, these are connected, and we're going to talk about that. But one of these is a lot easier to understand and practice, I think, than the other. I can be obedient without being honoring. I see this every day in my own home. I'm going to use my other child who's not here. Penny, go put your shoes on. Continues to stare at something else. Okay, Penny, let's go put your shoes on. March over, grabs her shoes, shoots me the side eye, shoes on. Did Penny obey? She did. Did she honor? She did not. These two are linked. Obedience flows from honor. But honor is harder to understand because I think there are young people who wonder, like, when do I cross that line from I'm honoring my parents to now I'm dishonoring? And it's not just obedience. We shouldn't teach our kids that the line of honor and dishonor is just, did you do what they told you to do? Because I don't think that's what he means by honor. I think there's more to it than just the action. It's about the mindset. It's about your motives. It's about your heart and how you feel toward your parents. I work with young people, and I will hear kids talk about their parents. And I'm like, nope. I can't. Number one, if this gets back to mom and dad, I'm in trouble. But no, like, you can obey, but still be dishonoring to your parents. And so Paul quotes from Exodus. Oh yeah, here's our let's move on. Paul, right here, is quoting from Exodus chapter 20 when he says, honor your father and your mother, that it may go well with you, and that you may live long in the land. The reason he's quoting this is to support what he just said about obedience. He said, why should you obey? Because you honor them. If I just teach obedience, it doesn't matter. My kids can be obedient and dishonoring. But nobody when they're talking about their kids goes, he's just incredibly disobedient at home. But he does it in such an honoring and respectful way. So I put up with it. It doesn't work that way. You can be obedient without being honoring. You cannot be honoring without being obedient. It flows from one another. And so when Paul quotes that, he's supporting what he just said. Children, obey your parents. Obedience is about action. Honor is about attitude. It's about mindset. It's about motive. Young people, let me give you some advice. Don't work on being more obedient. Work on being more honoring. Because if you honor your parents, if you love and respect and honor your parents, obedience is easier. Because when my kids are frustrated with me and I say, go clean your room, all they can think of, I don't want to do that. So I'm not going to obey. But if you can reach a level of honor and respect, you say, I don't want to do that, but I love this person. I respect this person, so I'm going to do what they've asked me to do. Look, this is easier as you get older. Now that I'm older, it's a lot easier to go, I should have honored my parents. Forgive me. I think I worked really hard at being as obedient as I could while still being dishonoring. Because that's easy. I have to be home by 10, but guess what? I am walking in at 10, and I'm going to be mad about it. Check your clock, Dad. 10 o'clock. It's 10:02. Grounded. Busted. So here are some ways I think young people dishonor parents. For those of you who are like, I don't know, like maybe I feel like I have good feelings towards my parents. Here's some ways I think we dishonor them. When you give them attitude as you obey, that's dishonoring. I'm doing it, but I don't have to be happy about it. You don't have to be happy, but you better act happy about it. You better look like you are having the time of your life doing it. Being obedient, but then talking bad about them behind their backs. Like I said, I hear kids talking to their friends. Oh, you would not understand what my parents made me do. They made me go to bed last night at a responsible hour. Wow, your parents are mean. Look, that's not honoring. It's not honoring to do one thing at home, but then speak a different way about them. Even just certain views you have as your parents. If you view your parents as the enemy, if you view your parents as they're just too strict, they're just too mean, they're just out to get me, that's dishonoring. You don't have to agree with everything they say. There are things my parents made me do growing up. I don't understand why I had to do it. Now I understand. We're just mean. They're just mean. They hated me. They didn't want me to have any fun. I didn't agree with it. I don't have to agree with it to still honor them. Because I can come from a place where I say they are older than me. Maybe, just maybe, they know better than me. Look, I know that's hard for us to admit, but maybe they're actually coming from a place of wisdom, and I'm only in this for myself, and what they're doing is actually good for me. It is okay to think that way. It is okay to say, I think my parents are very strict, but I at least understand why they're doing it. They're trying to look out for me. I am now the father of 2 little girls, and I'll just tell you, there are moments every day where I just want to get out a note and write, I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry, Dad. Write it and send it, but I can't afford the postage that it would take to do that. But young people, let me tell you something as a person who's now on the other side. I can still remember being a teenager. I can still remembering wanting to do one thing and my parents not letting me and thinking, this is too strict. But now that I'm on the other side, let me give you some wisdom. We as parents are not perfect. And it is hard work being a parent. I think many parents in this room can think of nights where they laid in bed and thought, I was not the parent that I wanted to be today. My kids have called me out on it before. I'll be upset and I'll be frustrated. And they'll say, didn't I hear you tell Mom you wanted to be a better dad? I'm like, you weren't supposed to hear that. And don't use it against me. And it's true. Most days I finish thinking, I wanted to be a better dad today. I did not live up to the standard that I set for myself. We allow anger and impatience and our other flaws to get in the way. That is not an excuse. I'm not telling young people you got to cut us slack because we just mess up and you got to deal with it. Responsibility is on us to be better parents. I understand that. But before you go off talking to your friends about how rude and disrespectful and strict your parents are, you might just take a second to think about how much work it is to be a parent. How much anxiety comes with being a parent. How many sleepless nights come with being a parent. And stop and think, you know what? Maybe I'm just thinking about what I want while my parents are thinking about what's best for me. Consider those things before we choose to dishonor them. All right. Obedience, honor. Those are the expectations. So let's talk about the motivations. Why do I care? Why should a young person care at all about whether they're obedient or whether they're honoring? Number one, it's right. It's right. And this word, it's right, is the same word you see in the story of Goldilocks. Goldilocks is going through the 3 bears' home. She comes to one chair, she sits, and she says, too soft. She sits in another one, she's like, too hard. And then she gets into a 3rd chair, and what does she say? Just right. It fits. This is where I'm supposed to be. She tries the porridge, she tries the different beds. She always gets to one where she says, it's just right. It's right. It's fitting. It fits me. That's what he means by it's right. He's not just saying it's good. It's a good thing to do. He's saying this is what you were made for. This fits. Have you ever tried to wear an article of clothing that just did not fit? It's either too tight or too loose. And the longer you wear it, you're like, oh, I got to get home and get out of this. Because honestly, every time I wear a tie, look, I get it. They look nice. but I feel like I'm being strangled by my clothes. And when I come home from church and I've worn a tie, I got to get that thing off. And then I have kids who are strangling me. So somebody else is doing it. I just want to get, because I don't feel comfortable. It's not right. It does not fit. Young people, some of you feel this feeling in your relationship with your parents that just does not feel right. It feels like an article of clothing that just does not fit. And there's no peace. And you can't figure out what it, you're like, I come home and I'm at odds with my parents immediately. I walk in, they say something, and right away, boom, we're button heads. And it feels like a tie that's just squeezing my neck and I can't escape it. Could it be it's because you have been trying a style of obedience and honor that does not fit? Because you haven't been obedient and because you haven't honored your parents, it's not right. But Paul says, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for it's right. It fits. It fits us. And so I'd recommend young people, if you feel like you're at a place in your relationship with your parents where you're at odds and you're always butting head, you may think about the fact that some of that may be on me because of the child I've chosen to be. The times, I can say this now, the times where I was at odds with my parents was not because of them. See, there you go. I said nice things. Except that one time. I'm just kidding. It's because of me. I made it hard for them. Nobody is like, hey man, I feel like you've been treating me badly as a friend. They're like, right, because every time I see you, you are punching me repeatedly in the face. Right, but why can't you treat me nice? Because you're punching me over and over in the face. And some young people are like, I don't know why my parents just seem mean. And they just yell. And they just fight with me. Yeah, because you come home and you are disobedient and you're dishonoring. And it is really hard to parent a kid that doesn't want to be parented. Now again, I'm not trying to get rid of our responsibility. Parents, read verse 4. There's a lot in it for us. But that's not the passage I was given, so this is just for the kids. Somebody else's job. But if you want peace, you want a good relationship, you are going to have to do some work. And you may have gotten to a point in your relationship where, because of your choices, it is rocky. And it may take a little time. Because the first time you come in, when you always sass your parents, and the first time you come in and they're like, you need to go clean your room, and you go, okay, Mom, right away. She'd be like, yeah, now. It's like, I said yes, I would. Because it takes, they're like, why, what? Something's wrong with my kid. They did what I told them to do. It may take some time, but stick with it, all right? So that's number one. That's the motivation number one. I don't know what that's underlining, but there you go. Number two, hang with me here, because this is not straight from the text. Number two reason, number two motivator. God rewards obedience. He rewards obedience. Here's what I mean by that. So in this passage, with these random lines down below the passage now, he says, honor your father and mother, that it may go well with you, that you may live long in the land. Some translations translate that you may live long in the earth. This is a quote from the Old Testament. It's talking about the land. And so, but because of that, I think there are people who think, well, if I'm obedient, I'm going to live long and prosper right here on earth. Look, there's some problems with that. Some serious problems. Number one, think of the Israelites. You've got a young kid. He's 10 years old. God has given the law at Mount Sinai, and it says this, that may go well with you, that you may live long in the land. And he goes, great, I'm going to be obedient. And then guess what happens? You and the rest of the Israelites wander in the wilderness for 40 years. And you're like, wait a second. I was promised a long life in the land, and I'm out here in the wilderness. God's not keeping his promise. Or think about our time. You've got a young kid who's a good kid, obedient, honoring. At a young age, they die. Is that what God is saying? Hey, if you're obedient, if you're honoring, you're going to live long here on this earth. I don't think that's what he's saying. I think, in essence, what God is saying is, I reward obedience. I think this passage, you're welcome to disagree with me. I think when God tells his people and you shall live long on the earth, he's not talking to individuals. He's talking to the people of Israel. He's saying, if you create a culture in which young people are obedient to their parents, that's going to flow into the rest of the culture. You're going to live long in the land. You're going to be prosperous. I'll bless you. I will bless you and reward you if you are obedient. And that's true today. I think if we had more families who are living their life the way that these passages say, it would spill into our communities. If you had young people who said, I'm going to be respectful and I'm going to be obedient, not only would that affect their home, it's going to start affecting homes around them. It's going to affect the way others in the church do it. It's going to affect people in their schools. And God is going to reward that obedience. But when he says live long in the land, I don't think he's talking about here, this land where we live. I think he's talking about our reward someday. Even if you've got a young child who has tried to be honoring and tried to be obedient, and then there's some terrible accident and that child loses their life. Have they missed out on God's promise? Absolutely not. God still rewards obedience. Sometimes, yes, in this life, but absolutely in the life to come. So, young people, if you're like, it's hard. It is hard to be obedient. It is hard to be respectful. And it's hard for me to figure out why it's worth my time. Number one, it fits. It is right. And you will feel more at peace in your relationship with your parents if you'll do it. But number two, you want God to reward you not just now, but in the life to come. That's what he calls for us. All right, I'm going to do something so nerdy. So nerdy. But again, if that's the title you give me, that's what I'm going to do. That's a verse. That's not nerdy. And that's also a verse. Okay, look at this. You like that? It's one day when I was practicing, I was like, I'm going to stand up in front of people and I'm going to have to do this. And then I was like, well, wait a second, my points. And you're like, what's the thumb? The thumb is nothing. The thumb's not... That's right. Wow, thanks, Dad. I should have talked. Okay, so some of you have never heard of Star Trek or Star Wars or whatever when we're talking about Star Trek. Sorry. Look, that's what you say when you want people to think you're not nerdy, but inside, you know it's Star Trek. I don't know. Star Trek. Some of you have never heard of this, but because this is weird, it's going to stick with you now. And that's great. So everybody, do this if you can. There's one very important person in this room. Can you do this? I'm going to have to start back over. Honor. Somebody missed it. All right. So this is just an easy way to remember this passage in Ephesians chapter 6, verses 1 and 3. You've got two expectations, and you've got two motivators, okay? And so someday when you're like, there was this really dorky guy who was trying to pretend he's not a dork, but we all knew he was a dork. He was talking about this, and I don't know what it's from, but I remember we're talking about living long and prospering. And if I want to live long and prosper in my life and in the life to come, this is it. So, obedience and honor. Okay? One of those is more important because one flows from it, but they're both important. And then the other, it's right, it fits, and God rewards obedience. Okay? Now, just my luck, later you're going to be like, I remember this. I don't remember what he said, but we're all greeting each other like this now. It's weird, but look, maybe it'll stick with you. Here's what I hope does stick with you. I know being a teenager is hard. I know it is. And I know that the parent-teen relationship can be difficult because I've been on both sides of it. Well, my kids aren't teenagers yet, but I've been a parent and I've been a child. I understand the frustrations of a child looking at a parent and saying, you're too strict, you're too controlling. I had parents who had a high standard for us, and now I'm thankful for that. But as a teen, yeah, it was really easy to just say, too strict. All my friends got to stay out till 11. I had to be home at 10:45. It's like, oh, I bet that 15 minutes was the best 15 minutes of their life. And I missed it. I know. Even the way I talk, I've already become a parent. Like, that's a way a parent would talk. We're not buying it, buddy. I understand how as a teenager it's easy to look and say, this is mom and dad's fault. This rocky relationship, it's mom and dad's fault. And so because of it, I'm going to disobey. And I'm going to be dishonoring. And then I also understand from a parent's perspective saying, I'm working really hard. And I feel like no matter what I do for my kids, they just don't seem to care about it. And they don't think about the fact that me and mom work really hard to provide for them, both physically and spiritually. So I see both sides. But young people, once again, this is a class for you. So parents, you're going to have to get it somewhere else. I'm sorry. I'm just kidding. Just keep reading the passage. Young people, if you want that relationship to be better, yes, I hope your parents will do things in their life to improve as a parent. But you've got some responsibility too. If you want peace, I tell our youth group all the time, nothing will surprise your parents more than for you to lead the charge in a certain area in life. As parents, we're supposed to be the ones that do that. But if you come in and you say, hey, can we just talk about something? Already they're going to be like, oh my goodness, here comes the big one. I don't know what it is, but it's going to be bad. And you're like, I feel like this relationship is not what it should be. And I think part of that is maybe because I have not honored you the way. And then once your parents pick their jaw up off the floor, there'll be a lot more open to talking about that. Now, here's the trick. Once you say that, then you're stuck. Because now you've just told them, I'm going to try to be better. And in the same way my kids call me out, parents, we can call our kids out. You said you're going to be better, and here we are. But if you will tell your parents, I think some of this is on me. I need to be more honoring. I need to be more obedient. Your parents are going to have an opportunity to go, okay, if my kids see this, there's some things I can do too. Parents, do not do this. It's about time. It's about time you came around. Been waiting for this moment. You are a rotten kid. Well, you just ruined it. You stole. Work with them. But young people, if you will be obedient and you will be honoring in your relationship with your parents, I promise you, it will bring peace and it will bring reward in your life. Don't miss out on those blessings because we miss out on the expectations. I'm going to pray, and then we're done a few minutes early, but appreciate you guys being here. I am losing my voice rapidly, and so I'm just going to be whispering by the end of this class, so we may as well be done a few minutes early. Let's pray. Lord, thank you so much for each person here. I'm thankful for those who will take a weekend and dedicate it to you and to learning and growing. And Lord, I pray that you'll bless the young people in here as they strive to be the children that you've called us to be through obedience and through honor. Lord, I pray that you'll be with us parents as we strive to be the kind of parents we've been called to be, that we will encourage them, that we won't view them as the only problem, Lord, but that we understand that there's responsibility that falls on us, and that we will all work hard, Lord, to build that relationship in a way that brings peace and brings blessing in our life. Watch over us the rest of this weekend. Keep us safe, Lord. It's your Son's name we pray. Amen.